What's up, creators? In this episode, we are going to go into the panel I just came back from on the FinTech Junction, which I had the pleasure to moderate. We're going to talk everything around Web3, the FTX collapse, regulation in the space, and CBDCs with some very, very distinguished guests. So you want to stick around till the end because this is a very important insight into how the Israeli fintech and Web3 startup ecosystem is shaping to be. So stick around till the end and see you in the inside.
You're listening to the Web3 Creators Podcast, where we speak to the brightest minds and builders in crypto, DeFi, NFTs, and the metaverse. Our goal is to give you the absolute best tools for building a thriving business in the Web3 space. Now, here's your host, Hernan Arber. Let's start creating.
Guys, welcome to the Web3 Creators Podcast. This is a very special episode, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you the panel I just came back from and had the honor to moderate at the FinTech Junction. And we had some very distinguished guests, which are Adam Benayoun from Collider Ventures. We had Tomer Niv from Entry Capital, so two of the leading VCs in Israel in crypto. We had Odelia Torteman from the World Bank and Merav Arel from HM Fintechs, and also Shlomit Wagman from Harvard University. She was one of the leading regulators in Israel. So we are talking everything around Web3, the FTX collapse, what does it mean for the space, and regulations, CBDCs, and the future of fintech and Web3 and where they overlap. So this is a very special episode. Stick with us to the end. I think you'll enjoy it. Now, a word from our sponsor of today's episode, which is the Web3 Creator Dojo. Guys, I'm so excited to just announce that we are launching today our flagship course at the Web3 Creator Dojo, and this is the Web3 Business Creator. Now, everyone in crypto is saying, oh, the bear market is the perfect time to build, but nobody's telling you how. And they are still trying to, send you to their trading course and their technical analysis school and giving you the Bybit link. So, what gives? They're telling you it's a perfect time to build, but they're still showing you how to trade. So this is a very special course I put together that drives you to the essential tools you need to build a thriving business in Web3. Now, this is not a trading course, so we're not going over which coins to buy or sell. This is also not a development course, so we're not actually getting into the nitty-gritty of the coding part. This is more of a business course, and we're going through the mindset that is required to build a thriving business, the milestones that you need to reach in terms of your deck, and how do you raise capital for your fund, the team you want to build. We go over some leading narratives, and we go into the foundations of how you can build a great Web3 business. So go check it out. We're giving free training this week, so make sure you make use of it. It costs nothing. You can join us, and we'll go over the course there. And if you already want to sign up for the course that's starting next month, you're welcome to do so. Go to web3creatordojo.com or w3cdojo.com and check out that intro video. All right, guys, welcome. I'm super honored to be hosting this panel. I think this is going to be a super interesting one. Thank you for the FinTech Junction for inviting us. And let's get started. Before I introduce myself, I want our distinguished panel members to introduce themselves. So I'll go ladies first, Merav.
Okay.
And so because we have a lot to speak about, guys, just name, outfit, and how long have you been in this crypto Web3 space?
Okay, so hi, I'm Merav Arel. I've been in finance and technology for over 20 years, combining the two before the name FinTech was created. and I've been in the space of crypto for the last almost 6 years. I was the COO of one of the big fundraising crypto projects in 2017, and since then I've been a COO of another 2 crypto projects. I'm a director at Excellence Trade, and I work almost with all of the regulators in Israel and all of the biggest banks here and abroad about everything that has to do with moving ahead with the new technologies that are being developed, including CBDCs. I was teaching yesterday at Bank Israel about crypto to them, and all the rest of the technologies that are available and how to move ahead with them.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, Tomer, crypto investor at Trading Capital.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Odelia Torfman. I'm a global digital finance specialist at IFC. IFC is a member of the World Bank Group. It's basically the private sector and investment arm of the World Bank Group, where we focus on both advisory as well as investment within private sectors in emerging markets. We also have an equity arm, which focuses on investing in fintech companies. Sweet spot would be around 10 million plus minus, but we're very flexible, and we're looking at everything that falls under the wider definition of digital transformation. I've been on this field of fintech and blockchain for the last 10 years, and before joining IFC, I was leading the fintech and blockchain arm of Deloitte under the technology consulting group. Very happy to be here with you today. Thank you, Renan.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. It's nice being here. My name is Shlomit. Until recently, I was the senior regulator in the Israeli government. I was the head of the Israeli Anti-Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing Authority. And in addition, I was a senior member of the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force. And under this framework, I took part in designing and implementing the global regulation on cryptocurrencies with respect to anti-money laundering and terrorism financing, and implemented that in Israel. Currently, I'm a faculty associate at Harvard University, where I'm exploring the future of global economy and how digital assets are being part of it.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Adam. I'm the founding partner at Benayoun Ventures. Benayoun Ventures is a fund that invests in Web3 entrepreneurs in Israel, but also outside of Israel. We have an incubator called Benayoun Labs that invests at the earliest stage when the entrepreneur just has an idea. It comes to us, we give them a small check, and then we help them through their journey. And we invest all the way to Series A and even later. And I've been in crypto since 1981. When I was born. Before Bitcoin and before, I was born for this.
That's a great answer. And I'm your host, I'm Hernan. I'm founder and CEO of Abertech. We help companies and entrepreneurs get into Web3 and get it right. I'm also the host of the Web3 Creators podcast, which you're all invited to tune in later on. And general all-around crypto DJing since 2017, which is now not a cool badge to wear, but it was pretty cool last year, so let's get on. Right, guys, we have to clear up some terminology here, because we've seen a lot of fintech panels talk about the metaverse and get into NFTs. So for me, Web3 is kind of a new terminology. First it was, if you guys remember, blockchain, smart contracts, and skills, right? Yeah. So Web3 is kind of new. For me, it's this all-encompassing term that includes DeFi, which is centralized finance, and NFTs, and the metaverse, and decentralized governance, and this whole gamma of new technologies that are emerging through the power of blockchain technology. But somehow there is an overlap with fintech, and I'm not sure if this is only through DeFi, which is centralized finance, or it's more broad. So who wants to take this one?
Let me take it, and let me maybe add one sentence about Web3, right? So Web3, like you said, there's a lot of different terminology that falls under the same thing, right? First we had Web2. Web2 was basically the second evolution of the internet, which mostly referred to the internet as a platform, right? And the ability to commercialize, the ability of individuals to engage within those social platforms, both on an e-commerce level, both on a social platform, the ability to post content, to interact. A lot of those technologies were very much reinforced by open APIs, by cloud computing, by smartphone, and so on and so forth. But still, the problem with Web3 is that most of this content and most of the ability to harness that content and to take those digital signature, if you will, was very much centralized by a very selective group of very big companies, such as Facebook, such as Google. So all of that state, right, that digital value that was created, was not basically being generated and was not being monetized by the individual themselves. And then came Web3, decentralization by design, which basically refers to the ability of one individual, one consumer, to hold that state and to be able to transfer it and to forward it and even to be monetized by it. And that's exactly what different distributed ledger technology, blockchain protocols, Bitcoin protocols, and the like are enabling one to do. So to the question whether that competes with traditional financial institutions, I don't think so. I actually see it as an even innovatable next stage, right? Because the ability to transfer value seamlessly and effectively basically sits at the heart of economic development and at the heart of modern finance. And while Web2 enables us to transfer information faster and to create all kinds of different services and solutions on top of it, it did not enable the end personal consumer and the end individual to hold it and take it basically to the next level. So I really think that this is not relevant for all applications, but this is what sits at the heart of it, and I think that we will see innovation that's taking place within those niche, within those different consumption value chains where it's relevant for.
I will add to it and say that people think about Web3 as an evolution to the internet. This Web 1 open, but not really not really rich in user experience, very static, read only.
The read-only mode.
Yeah, read only, and then Web 2 was read and write, and really in 2005, when we first experienced Facebook and Twitter and all of these and the social web, it was amazing, and but then it took it. I think it lasted probably 7 years. Took it that turn, and for me, Web3 is more a movement, like open source, and it understands one thing. I mean, I think the person and the privacy is really important. People don't care about privacy. I mean, if you ask people here, they all have Google account, they all have Facebook account. They don't really understand what the platform means, and so. The bigger threat that we don't talk enough about, because everyone is hooked on Web2, all the VC want to invest and become a monopoly, is Web2, and what become of Web2 in the last 5 years is actually a threat to innovation, threat to startups. Because when you have the internet, which is supposed to be completely open, it's controlled by 5, 6, or 7 or 10 companies like Facebook, Apple, and many others, and now you cannot start a company, you cannot distribute your product, you cannot reach the customer without those platforms, then suddenly you cannot exist in this ecosystem. We've seen that in the past. Twitter became so big at some point that they closed the API and killed like a complete ecosystem. $100 million, even billions of dollars of shareholder value, and VC and entrepreneur got completely wrecked and slashed, and then after that with Facebook, and we see that over and over again. And so for us, Web3, kind of try to negate that in a way. It's not going to change it. It's going to be complementary to Web2 in a way that I see it.
So what I want to know, guys, is the overlap in FinTech and Web3. It's not the same. It's not totally opposed, right? It's not only open networks or financial technology. But so where is the overlap, and why is Web3 so impactful, and why is it a central point of the conversation in all our panels within the fintech space?
So I'll take that. When we're talking about fintech, we're talking about financial technologies, as everybody knows. And one of the interesting developments that happened, in addition to the innovation that was created in banks or for banks and for this financial system, we can see the technologies that have to do with blockchain, NFTs, and the ability to decentralize and to create solutions that exactly enable the things that Odelia and Adam have been speaking about, which is the ownership of data. So if we're talking about where the connection between FinTech and Web3 happens, it's interesting because as Shlomit said, when we're talking about Web3, we're talking about actually, I'd say, decentralizing everything, not necessarily just the financial services, but the tools that are going to be used in order to do this are the tools that have been created under the sector of financial technology, specifically in the fields of crypto and blockchain and decentralization and NFTs. So that means that these are the tools that are going to be harnessed and then moved into, I'd say, helping the evolution of the internet into the next phase of it, which would include actually the ownership of data by each and every one of us, or the creators.
It's a great answer. Shlomit, you want to add something?
I would like to add to that. I think that to me, Web3 and the interaction with fintech and financial system is actually an hourglass, on whole. If we see Web2 as a very narrow hourglass when only few intermediaries were able to control the system and to make sure that there is trust between remote parties. Let's say that I want to transfer funds from one party to another. I had to use a bank in order to get the correspondent services. Now with the Web3, this hourglass became wider. There is an opportunity for many additional intermediaries to take part in this economy and make sure that the way that we transfer value, similar to the revolution that happened in the way that we transfer data in the past 20 years, so that in the way that we transfer value now, there are many more intermediaries as part of the fintech industry that can actually provide the assurance and trust between those remote parties that the money or the value or whatever I want to make sure that is actually authentication and original will be created. Now, it's also important to say that it doesn't mean that everything is unregulated and unsupervised, but there is a trust, there are mechanisms to create trust between those parts, and then the fintech industry has many opportunities to actually take advantage of it and be part of the wider financial system.
That's great answers, everyone. I want to move to our very hot topic. So, guys, that was a great smooth intro. That was the vanilla part of the panel. We're gonna go into what's in everyone's minds and in everyone's mouths and on everyone's feed. That's FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, the whole drama around it. We're gonna go a bit deep into it. This question is directed, Tome, Adam. We, and by we, I mean the retail investors, have gotten used to getting basically our assets handed to us by you. And by you, I mean the VCs, the hedge funds, the capital, and the asset managers, right? And with this particular collapse of FTX, we are talking about Sequoia, Pantera Capital, Andreessen Horowitz, Multicoin. Like these are the big guys are getting hit by this collapse. So, is this changing your views on Web3? Do you find yourself in need to adapt, or is this, not affecting the way you view Web3 at all?
So the answer is no. It doesn't affect the investment thesis. I even think that it's irresponsible to change your investment thesis regarding blockchain due to any specific event. The long-term investment thesis of blockchain haven't changed since the inception of Bitcoin.
But doesn't this change the modus that thesis operate? Because I think there was a lot of domino effect of Andreessen said I'm in, and there was almost no due diligence.
There are two different things. So one thing is the level of due diligence that huge tier 1 global business did on FTX. That's subject for them to answer. I don't know exactly what was their level of due diligence. But the fact that a centralized exchange like FTX, was abused by human people, doesn't mean anything about the blockchain technology. It even emphasizes the importance of DeFi and decentralization and transparency in the ecosystem.
So I was going to say it's not only change, it's actually saying, we told you, right? It's like, that's why we need Web3. But I want to start
Don't say that I told you so.
No, I don't want to be there. But I want to talk about FTX, and I want to say something, and I want to take it off the table and say that FTX has nothing to do with crypto. FTX was, if you want to say FTX is, linked to crypto, it's like saying the supermarket is in the agriculture industry because it sells tomatoes and vegetables and everything. It was an exchange. It was unregulated because, the regulator pushed it maybe outside of the US, and that's something we can talk about it later. But for some reason, FTX is not crypto. It actually underscored the value of Web3. It was centralized. It was opaque. There was two failures there. The first failure is the failure of governance, and we can can talk about, and then the failure of regulation that I think other people here might even have better insight than I have. But the first one is really, really big, and it's not just crypto, it's everywhere. The last 6 or 7 years, because money was abundant and was free, people were just allocating capital like crazy in Web2, and the difference between FTX and crypto and the regular world is that the regular world is slow motion. Everything is in motion. It's going to happen there in the next year and a half. There are a lot of companies who don't have money, but they're dead, and they're going to die a slow death, but they will impact everyone. And in crypto, it's happened in very fast motion. And actually, I think what happened with FTX, it didn't come from the mainstream media. It actually came from users and a lot of people investigating and looking at blockchain, because it's still transparent. And people were red flagging FTX and Alameda. And actually, if we had listened to them, we could actually have avoided FTX and Alameda. But it's just underscored the whole value. And to me, is all of my LPs, people who invested in me, told me, it's great. You're gonna have an amazing opportunity in the next 3 or 4 years. Actually, if everything is going to be depressed, it's your time to shine and invest. And we're still investing in the same type of company we've been investing in the last 3 or 4 years.
So you guys were not exposed to FTX?
The funds have not been exposed to FTX because we have a very strict risk management and we don't trust unregulated exchanges. But on the other hand, we also cannot operate in regulated exchanges like Coinbase. So we're trying to tiptoe around exchanges. It's just, whenever we need, we get in, we do whatever we have to do. But as a fund, because we invest in companies, we only get to an exchange when we need to sell. And because we're a VC and we look long term, we don't actually need to sell pretty early. So, I'm hoping that in 5 years or 6 years, whatever, when I need to sell some position to my company, there'll be a regulated, framework, not just in the US, but everywhere.
Adele, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I would say a few things and also to react to some of the things that Adam said. So first, I think that FTX is an epic episode, right? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be lots of courses about it in practically any discipline whatsoever in future times. And I think that also the way to analyze it, right? You can either analyze it from an investment point of view on how sufficient or, well done or badly handled was the due process to start with, that's one. And you can look at it from the consumer perspective, from the retail consumer, and add to what you've mentioned regarding transparency. I think one of the key lessons we've learned in this episode is how lack of transparency we have there, right? And also what you mentioned before. I mean, when we think about Web3 and also about distributed ledger and the distribution nature of everything, at the end of the day, it's not that distributed, and it's also not that transparent at all. It's not like once you place those values, those assets on one distributed ledger, one might imagine to think that everything is transparent and everything sits on one same ledger. But it is not. On the contrary, building systems and softwares and networks that are built on DLT protocol makes everything even far more isolated than it already is, specifically within the financial service industry, systems, legacy, ledgers, and core banking system. So that is an A. B, I think that the reason for the crash is almost mostly with regards to corporate governance, to rules, again, to transparency, to liquidity, to default, to even how does one deal whenever we're dealing with bankruptcy. I think that it highlights even more that those different digital economies, those digital token-based systems, are not basically developed based on the governing rules that we have as the overall traditional financial service industry, whether the only thing that governs them is the DLT protocol that those systems are based on. And when you're dealing with those kind of volumes and when you're dealing with those kinds of scale, they hold water. And this is exactly what happened. This is what happened with Celsius, this is what happened with Terra, this is what's happening with different types of stablecoins everywhere. They are, in the end of the day, the bridge between the fiat ecosystem, if you will, and the crypto and the digital currencies ecosystem, which in the end of the day, there aren't really two separate financial systems. There's one. And in order to make it to scale, you need to build an infrastructure and a framework that will enable it.
We agree on that. We are all into this one emerged ecosystem. So, speaking about what Adam said, which is avoiding what happened, Shlomit, this is a question for you and regulators. Everyone and his mother is calling for more regulation, stricter regulation. Even Joe Biden just called for more and overhauling regulation in crypto. But in this case, we are speaking about an exchange that was, coffee buddies with Gary Gensler at the SEC. They were one of the most outgoing and foregoing exchanges with the regulators. We could say that they were one of that had extensive regulatory oversight in the US. Are the regulators partly responsible in this case for either not providing clarity or maybe acting in some even obscure ways that we don't understand yet?
Thank you so much for the question. So perhaps to start with, I think that this case is a great example of huge financial fraud. And this is how we should call it. That was a fraud. And justly was compared in the US to the Enroll fraud, which happened, I can't remember, like 15 years ago or 20 actually, when the damage that was caused to a supervised industry was about $100 billion. And as a result of that, one of the big five accounting firm was dissolved. And Arthur, if I'm not mistaken, do you remember it was like we had big five and not big four? So history comes back, and I think that there is a combination here of a couple of things. So first we can learn from what John Ray, that was appointed to do the dissolvation or to head the company statements are. John Ray was the person that was appointed to actually do the bankruptcy of Enroll 20 years ago. And what he says, and I'll quote, it says that there was a complete failure of corporate controls, a complete absence of trustworthy financial information, and compromised system integrity and faulty regulatory oversight. Now, we don't know much yet, but with respect to the regulation, I can say that. I think that the regulation in this case, and generally speaking, should be divided into two aspects, the oversight and the regulation itself. With respect to the oversight, apparently it seems that there was dramatic lacks of oversight because it was in part, only a small part of FTX was subject to US regulation. I will open brackets and say that most of the activities was under different regulators. It was not regulated in many countries. For example, Singapore, the UK, and many other countries issued warning to their citizens not to work with this platform because it was not regulated. And in the US, the way that they tried to put it under the regulation was in merger acquisitions with other platforms. So it was not went through the entire due diligence process and licensing process, but they were trying to do shortcuts. And the SEC is now saying that they have not granted them the license through one of the merger that they were hoping to achieve, that was in the middle of the process. But this is something that John Gray, the person that was appointed, now will check. However, it does seem to be that there was a lack of oversight, generally speaking, because not only in the US, but globally. First, because there is a lack of, the tools are there. The investors and customer protection rules are there, and regulators should have taken more closer look at what's going on. But we need to remember that sometimes regulators are left behind because they don't have enough abilities and knowledge to do that. But the second part is that there's a lot of regulation that is missing. I would like to mention that up until now, globally, the only regulation that is strictly applied to crypto is only at money laundering and terrorism financing aspects, the regulations that I took part in putting in place in Israel in like 100 countries by now. But there are many things that are missing, and the Biden administration earlier this year already pointed on it, the commingling of funds, the transparency issue, the stability, and many other aspects. And those things have to be regulated as soon as possible, and regulators must get into the details, to the bottom of it. And I would also mention that the part that was managed in the US was under two different regulators, and this is always a problem that there are too many regulators involved. The SFTCs, which was actually licensing more major part of the FTCs, and another at the SEC, which is not certifying that. So they are very busy in the US defining crypto, whether this is a commodity or a security. I think this is a security, but the relevant supervisor was the future commodities supervisor.
Spoken like a true regulation expert, but you didn't actually answer my question. Let's go for a yes or no. Are the regulators, in this case, partially responsible for what happened? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're on the same page there. I'm going to open up the question. Anyone can take it, but no more than one or two, because we're going to move on to CBDCs, which is also a very important subject. What do you guys think is the biggest lesson that we need to learn as an industry from this whole collapse, other than, not your keys, not your coins, do not pour too much power on centralized authority? What do you think is the biggest takeaway that we need to absorb and implement to keep growing as an industry?
So I don't think it's related to business or to the crypto industry, but just apply critical thinking. And that's very basic concept in general in life, yeah.
First principles.
Yeah, like you need to doubt things and you need to ask questions and not to follow the herd and try to, it was very obvious, at least for me and for many other people in the industry, 2 or 3 years ago, what are the bad practices in the market, especially regarding the relationships between exchanges and market makers, and everyone read Flash Boys and everyone know what's going on Wall Street, and it just happened again in crypto, and there was no real surprise. And obviously I feel bad and sorry for 1 million retail users that lost their money, and I don't feel that bad for the VCs that didn't apply the relevant measures. I mean, they had no vote. Like we asked for a vote in a $2 million seed investment, and they invested.
I think Jamaat Palihapitiya was invited to participate in the round, which was $420 million at a $25 billion valuation for FTX, which is an exchange. I repeat, we've done some of those. And when they asked for a generation of a board, right, and to create some governance around the company, the response was kind of fuck off.
Yeah, I couldn't say that, but exactly that's
that's
what happened. Yeah, so one thing is critical thinking. The second thing is risk management. And as a VC, I really think that we need to see much more startups dealing with risk management. And again, it's not that hard. There is a lot of history of risk management in Web2, in the financial industry. And I think most of they were kids. Basically, most of the entrepreneurs and the founders of the exchanges, they're great innovators, but not all of them came from 20 years experience in the financial industry. And so if you don't come from it, at least get the right board of advisors or any kind of advisor that will guide you how to do proper risk management.
And we had a board of advisors. All the VC were advisors, so they had a board of advisors. They didn't have any corporate governance, no board. And to be fair, I think it was completely.
Was it a board of advisor or was it a VC cheerleader board?
No, it was a board of advisor. They were, Sam was calling, Sequoia was talking to them, and Multicoin and everyone. And I know some people were personally investing even at the seed. I think when Sam started, he had good attention, but it's a problem when you start
a slippery slope.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, and then you find yourself into a big fraud. But one, it was a complete failure of corporate governance, but then I need to be fair with them, and I can also explain another facet to it. And I think that today, Thomas said that he's asking for a board seat, but there are some businesses that you want to make sure that you get a director and officer insurance, and you won't get one for crypto. I mean, there's only one insurance provider. We got one, and it was from the Bahamas, right? So there's only one carrier that we were actually able to get an insurance for crypto and stuff like that. And so today I'm sitting on the board, but I know that at some point maybe someone will sue me, and I will have personal liability, and that's a real problem when you invest in something that is not regulated, that impact millions of retail. So I can see the line of thinking of some of the VCs saying, we're not going to sit on the board, not because we don't want to oversee that guy, we're just going to throw money, we'll sit on the sideline, we'll give him some advice, and they never thought that there was going to be a fraud happening. So I think it comes up to...
Is it more on the side of avoiding accountability, or is it more on the side of letting them run with what they believe?
Liability. I think they were all accountable. I mean, all of them did really badly, but But again, if it was a fraud, even if you had done DD, there are something you couldn't see. I mean, you have no audit.
Yeah,
they tell you, we're a crypto company. There's no audit.
got fooled by this. So, Shirley, you wanted to add something?
Just like in one sense, I think that the major takeaway from this case is that this is a crisis, but it's also an opportunity. I think that Bitcoin was created after the 2008 crisis of the financial system, and people wanted to trust something else. So Bitcoin was created, but it's developed too fast and too wild. And I think that now it's a good opportunity for everyone, both for regulators that realize that they must act quickly, and the market that realize that there are financial regulation that must be followed strictly. And I think that thesis will also follow that more strictly from now on. And I think that this is an opportunity to create a better and more sustainable ecosystem and environment, and to make sure that it's in compliance with financial regulation, consumer protection, but not only that, because you also have investor and consumer protection, and taxes, privacy, money laundering, and other regulation. And with data, funds will not be able to succeed and to actually work in financial markets because of the high regulation.
And I must add something very important regarding that. I think financial institutions need to be completely regulated, very, very high standards. The technology and the innovator that are building Web3 at the beginning need to have a sandbox of friendlier regulation. I mean, the more thing you can do as a regulator is to push all the innovation outside of your country. And then you'll find people like Sam going to Bahamas, doing stuff, and then when something happens, the regulator, like Shlomit said earlier, will be like, oh, we didn't know about it, we don't understand the thing. So it happened in the 90s with cryptography, with SSL and other stuff. And the thing that I keep telling the regulator in Israel, you want Israeli to build here, even if it means issuing tokens, if it means doing stuff that might be a mistake down the road, but give them a blanket that nothing will happen to them, and you will be able to learn from them.
Foster innovation. All right, guys, we are short on time. I want to touch on CBDCs because it's something critical, and I think this is I see it as a big clash. We have Odelia here, which I personally see as our last human link between us, the people, and the central banks. Odelia, CBDCs, is it going to be an all-out war between open, public, accessible networks and decentralized finance and the central bank digital currencies? Since blockchain is just a technology, it can be used for good, it can be used for evil, it can be used to control, but you can use to liberate people. Do you see this as an all war, or do you see CBDCs as also kind of an engine to drive Web3 innovation?
Thank you. First of all, I don't see myself as a bridge to central banks globally, by the way. I mean, you and I have a lot of conversation about that, right? Hernan is extremely terrified from CBDC, thinking that this is the 1984 scenario, right?
Let's call it opposed.
Opposed, exactly. And I think CBDC have a lot into them. I mean, from one hand, CBDC and Web3 indeed sits on the same infra and on the same technical aspect, if you will, on the sense of capturing that state, capturing the digital value, creating a digital infrastructure, creating a programmable aspect of it, and enabling it to scale. However, I think there's a big difference between Web3 applications, which are targeting mainly either a collectible, a smart ID, an art piece, or even a digital assets, whether when we're speaking about sovereign money, right? So central banks that are developing sovereign money are under very different mindset and very different regulations, if you will. And also the main difference sits between who's actually issuing it, right? When we're speaking about CBDC, the issuing authority is the central bank, meaning that same way as with cash, they are issuing it as a liability to the central bank. Unlike different Web3 applications, which are issued by a private authority, which are governed by different algorithms. Now, this is the difference. So I think that the two, from one hand, are related from a technology point of view. As I said before, I think that one of the key challenges is the interoperability between projects, both from different CBDC projects around the world. The different CBDC are not necessarily looking only on developing a sovereign currency. Different projects are focusing on different aspects and use cases like cross-border, like P2G payment and so on, and G2P payment and so on and so forth. So from a tech point of view, I think that the development that the CBDC are doing from an interoperability level would be extremely beneficial. But from a conception point of view, I think these concepts are very different, right? I mean, and one can also say, now that we have Web3 application, we can develop basically a specific token or currency for each one of a service or a product that one wants to consume, and I can hold all of them in my personal wallet. But however, unfortunately, in a modern global economy, we don't live in silos of consumption. And we do need one measurement to bind them all, hold them all, and make sure that indeed there's some kind of structure and order between them.
Meirav, this one is for you. So, since the CBDCs are a reality now, how do we protect our privacy and our sovereignty when it comes to financial transactions? Now that CBDCs are going to be this all-inclusive, all-digital, goodbye cash type of system.
So I think, first of all, it's important that all of us understand what we're talking about, because the ability that is embedded inside CBDCs is taking the technologies that have been creating, as a crypto project, and embedding them into hands of actually centralized entities that are creating the next type of money. And I'm talking about two specific abilities that the new money can have. One of them is their ability to be programmed, okay? And the second of them is the ability to actually see each transaction that happens, because the moment that it's digital, you have a trail, right? And I think that in order to understand where the danger lies, it's really important to see the different kinds of pilots that have been happening around the world, and specifically one of the pilots that happened in China, where people actually came and...
That's a bit more than a pilot.
Yeah, but for those that are not aware of this, maybe we should just cap it, okay? One of the central bank digital currency pilots that was done in China was a situation where the regulators told the people, you can now get our new digital currency, and you just need to download an app that, you can have the money there and you can start working, and people really did that, and inside they actually found some money, imagine 100 shekels, and they started to try to work with it. And then what they found was that because the system used smart contracts which enable programming the money, they could not transfer it from one person to the other. They could only buy in specific stores that have been vetted before by the Chinese government. They could only buy specific things in those stores, and if they did not use that money in the wallet in a certain amount of time, it was taken away, okay? Now all of these things happened because the ability that now exists when you're talking about digital money is to program it. You can put terms inside that, which raise a lot of questions, and that's what you said, that now regulators around the world have to deal with, actually, right? They need to ask themselves. Now there are a few solutions, and this is before we're talking about the issue of privacy. So one of the solutions that is now being tested in the United States, in regards to privacy at least, is that when we're creating CBDCs, is that it's being done in two layers. The first layer of the CBDC is the one that is done inside the banking system. It is not retail-based, okay? And that one is completely transparent. It's not
May I add?
privacy.
Sorry. It has been very, very, very interesting, and we could continue for hours, but we still have one question, and we need to move forward.
I do want to wrap up. So, as a conclusion, guys, whoever wants to give this out, to end up in a positive note, how do you envision us and the Web3 space in the future? How do you envision with Web3 is kind of our real new internet? And I open it to whoever wants to.
I say that we own our own data and we monetize our own data, and I think that this is kind of like an ethical question of where we as humanity want to go. Because all of the directions are open and they're using the same technologies. We can go to what I just exemplified, or the other side of it, where each one of us holds the data for himself and can monetize it, and we actually have some sort of basic income based on our data. So it's everything in the range, and hopefully, it's a question about where humanity wants to take it.
Anyone else?
I'm hoping that a lot of the things that are like, we need to trust them, like regulation, licensing, everything, all the bureaucracy will be hard-coded, and, people will know before they actually use or before they actually start a company or do something. They'll know exactly what they need to be done, and the level of entry to do something, even in the financial system, would be lower because of that. So you don't need to trust someone that will give you a license. You'll trust a system that will check if you can actually apply for it, and all the stuff that we had people cover like AML and KYC and all stuff would be outcoded into the system. So I think Web2 would actually create unconstrained innovation and make innovation more equitable and more democratized.
I think that this is an opportunity for a revolution in the way that we transfer data, we transfer value, and I think that everyone should be, in order to succeed in that, we have to make sure that we are aware of the triangle between technology, financial systems, and regulation. We have to have a holistic view because otherwise technology will not be able to succeed and to break through.
Guys, I want to thank you very much for being in the panel. And
I have one question.
We have one question.
There's no time, but
okay.
This question could be open a whole beehive. But the elephant in the room is decentralized exchanges. I don't know if you guys talked about them. Is it even relevant to regulate them because they're all decentralized? And what do you, investor capital, have to say about decentralized?
I want to add something about decentralized exchanges. At the end of the road, every decentralized exchange with every automatic market making protocol has a front end that is run by a company that is paying for that domain and is hosting that interface somewhere. So
DNS?
What?
Everything is now decentralized. You can have a DNS domain. You can have the front end as open source, connected directly to the blockchain. Everything's become decentralized. So regulation, you might argue, becomes irrelevant. Sorry.
In one sentence, I fully disagree. I think that we've proven and shown how decentralized platforms, even more than centralized platforms, are being subject to regulation. The AML CFT example, I think, is a very good one. I'm happy to further discuss that, but yes.
As a decentralization maxi, but also pragmatic, we're not going to get rid of the real world and the regulation. And at the end of the day, we need to understand that we need also to protect consumer, and we're not there yet. And so the application layer needs to be regulated because it's being run by people that could do things, but the underlayer, which is Ethereum, cannot be regulated. So we need to find a right way of regulation, and regulation needs to change. We need to educate the regulator, we need to tell them how do we do it, and how do we do it globally.
The time is up.
We're getting kicked.
Thank you very much, guys. Please keep in mind that none of what's said in this podcast should be considered financial advice. You are strongly recommended to do your own research and do not take anything we say in this podcast as a recommendation to buy or sell any assets whatsoever.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Web3 Creators Podcast. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and all of your favorite platforms. And if you're serious about building your own Web3 business, head over to web3creatordojo.com and check out our courses. That's web3creatordojo.com. See you soon, creators.